Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good something to all you YouTubers out there in YouTube land. This is the old soldier coming back at you from Robeson County, North Carolina, just outside of the little bitty town of Parkton. Today is Monday, the 19th day of August, 2019, and it is Poetry Monday. And this is a new one. Well, it's really not new. I wrote this a while back. I just haven't published it yet in any of my books, which is becoming out in the third book once I get started on it. You heard right. I'm going to write a third book of poems. Hopefully it'll sell better than the other two, but we're going to try one more time. But the title of the poem is just simple, Service to Nation. And the reason I wanted to read this one today, it seems like so many people have got to the point of what's in it for me? What I get from it? What's the benefit to me? I think President Kennedy summed it up best when he stated, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." Sadly, so many people nowadays are they're in things for themselves, even sports. Somebody asked me once why I don't watch professional sports anymore, and I just, my opinion, now this is my opinion, there's no honor amongst athletes anymore, it seems like. There's no loyalty to teams. And maybe I'm wrong with my observation, but it seemed like starting somewhere about the mid-90s, so many of the players got wrapped up in, all about the money and not the organization. When I was growing up, you had teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers that had people like Terry Bradshaw and Franco Harris and Lynn Swann, Meade and Joe Green, among others. You had the Dallas Cowboys with Roger Staubach, Ed Too Tall Jones, to name a few. The Houston Oilers, who had, any other day I could think of his name, played for Georgia State. Herschel Walker. Okay. All professional athletes with honor and loyalty. And I'm sure they were all paid very well too, but when you'd see them, it seemed like they wouldn't bring that up. That never really came out into the public eye. But anyway, back to it today. Today's Monday, Service to Nation. And it goes to read. You stood up and said, "I will," when others said, "Let someone else." You went into harm's way when others ran the other way. You sacrificed family and friends, weekends and holidays, when others went on as though you did not matter. For granted you were taken to protect and defend our great nation, our great land. Know this, brave soldier, you are not forgotten. Though you have departed, the ultimate sacrifice given. May the Lord of Lords, the one true Savior, welcome you in His arms, and peace be given you forever. For your time in hell it has been served, eternal rest you have earned, a place in paradise you do deserve. God rest your soul in this hallowed ground. May you sleep in peace, brave soldier. A lot of my poetries are kind of based on things like that. Some of it I speak of my own service, some of it just observations, reflections, remembrance of other things I've read and studied and been a part of. My father's generation, my father was part of the greatest generation, as they've titled him. My father's first time in the Army, he was selected by friends and neighbors. What's that mean? He was drafted, like so many people during that generation. but he did not seek to escape the draft. He did not seek to have someone else fill his shoes. He was called, he answered, he went. I'm not so sure about many today that if called they would go. I'm really just not so sure. And the reason I say that, it goes back to the poem I wrote a while back called Remember Me. Now granted, I recruited over 20 years ago, or close to 20 years ago, not quite there yet, but almost. And I heard it from so many parents, and it's somebody else's but not mine. I heard it from so many kids that I ain't going, I'm not going to go fight in that person's war, this, that, or the other. And the slew of things go on and on. But my point I'm getting at is, if you love this country, what are you willing to give to protect it? What sacrifice are you willing to make in order to protect it? Now, there's some of you, my viewers, that have done as I have. You have served your nation. You have served it proudly. You have served it honorably, and you have served it well. Of you, I do not speak to, because I know where your heart is and what you have done. But I am speaking to a greater mass of people that I'm just curious. What is your thought process? Would you answer the call if it was made today? And I'm not talking about the one during the Obama administration, the so-called service to nation, where, you go serve in Peace Corps or something and call that to, and don't get me wrong, Peace Corps, they do certain things that I agree with, some things that don't, but to me it's not the same as serving to defend your nation. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. I don't care. But what are you willing to sacrifice to protect your nation and your way of life? And that's and the reason I speak of this is this. We have too many politicians, too many municipal government workers in positions of power and authority kowtowing to a smaller group of people who wish to convert our nation into a socialist, communist sphere of influence in the world. They wish not to step on people's toes. They would rather capitulate and give in so as not to create a scene or a disturbance. So my question to you once again is, what are you willing to do to protect our nation? What are you willing to do to protect our way of life? How far will you go in order to do so in this day and age? What are you willing to give up in order to remain free and to retain the rights that are laid out for us in the Constitution of the United States of America? You have to be willing to ask yourself that question before you go out and you say this, that, or the other, this I'll defend, this is what I would do. You have to be able to answer with no uncertain terms what you are willing to give up, what you are willing to sacrifice, what you're willing to put forth to protect our way of life. Now, I've heard some people talk that they ought to bring the draft back. Okay. You want to see draft rights bigger than the ones they had in Vietnam? Bring it back in this day and age. See what happens. You will get a group of individuals that do not want to be there. And with the mentality our youth have today, not only they will not want to be there, they will be almost next to impossible to train. The point I'm getting at is the military services now recruit to fill the ranks because we're an all-volunteer force, and therefore they put incentives out there to attract the best and the brightest. Do they always get them? No, but certainly they get a good fair share of them. But in the event of a drastic, tragic, catastrophic event where our nation would need large amounts of troops, they may go back to a draft. But even before they do that, they would put out a call for volunteers just to see how many they would get. Now, grant you, when I was on recruiting duty, I was out there when 9/11 happened. The moment after it happened, within a few weeks, our phones were blowing up in our recruiting station. We had people that were trying to volunteer that could not even get in because of either criminal background, health issues, age, education. Okay. So the reason I'm saying this is what, because there were some stereotypes that I had to deal with high school guidance counselors when I was a recruiter, with educated parents. When I say educated, they had above a high school diploma. Many of them had a false narrative, if you will, of what life in the military was about and what it was for and what it could do. I had one guidance counselor. She thought the military was for kids that are always in trouble, that couldn't learn, and had mommy and daddy issues at home and needed the military to discipline them. Well, I'm telling you, the military does not want discipline problems. Secondly, in order to join the Army as a high school senior in the delayed entry program at the time, and it may have changed now, but at the time, you had to score a 50 or better on the ASVAB to get into the delayed entry program as a senior in high school. If not, you were going to have to wait till you graduated and become a graduate in order to get in with less than a 50. You had to score a minimum of a 32 in order to qualify for enlistment with a high school diploma. During my 3 years of recruiting duty, very seldom did we take people with a GED, because the Army did this big, long study and test that stated that anybody with a GED was prone to quitting anything they attempted to start. Now, granted, that's kind of a generic statement, but that's what the study said. So, when I was a recruiter, if I had a guy that had GED, we'd have to take him up to community college, get him enrolled in class, and that would consider them back to being a high school senior, because they were proving the Army they were willing to improve themselves beyond just that diploma, or that high school equivalency diploma. Moving right along, people would come in and say, "Well, my judge, the judge told me I could get my charges dropped if I could join the Army." Well, the Army will not enlist you if you have any open and/or pending charges. And a recruiter, could not go into the courtroom and tell a judge that if you drop the charges, he can enlist. It's a big violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Do recruiters still do it? I bet you a dime to a dozen there's some that are getting away with it. Okay? Can't prove it, so I won't accuse nobody of it. Did it happen? Of course. But that recruiter takes a chance of it coming back to bite him or her in the rear end. I was one that would not do that. And I would tell the applicant and their parents. I had one that he went up to a college and got in a lot of trouble and wasted mommy and daddy's money. He wasted $15,000 of mommy and daddy's money at school and got in some trouble and come back. Mommy and daddy all of a sudden wanted him to join the Army. Where the year before I tried to get him to enlist. Mommy and daddy, nope. Little Johnny's going to this 4-year university. He's going to be a spectacular whatever he was studying to be, and that had no need to be in the military. Okay, I had another one. Well, little Bobby going to go be a football hero. He go to football. He going to go play football, and he going to be a football hero. So you leave him alone because he going to be a football hero. Okay. Graduated high school. Where was he at? 2 years later, he was still in a prep school. Why? Because he cared not for academics. Colleges would not touch him. But his dad swore up and down he's going to go be a football hero. Okay. That playing pro football was going to be his claim to fame in the world, and that's fine. I'm not knocking anybody that wants to go and play professional sports. The point I'm getting at is that there is a very small percentage of people that make it to the professionals, and even with that, they come from the colleges into that arena, and you have to have something to fall back on. Is what I tell them. Like guys, I'd have student athletes that were getting athletic scholarships and tell them, "Well, why haven't you put in for academic scholarships?" Well, I've got a scholarship here from the University of wherever that's going to pay for everything. That's fine. That's great. What happens? You get hurt. Things to think about, folks. But what bottom line at the end of the day, these were all things that people would tell me why they didn't want to go serve in the military. And that's fine. It's a free country. You can do what you choose to do if you put your mind to it. But at the end of the day, if our way of life is threatened, if our freedoms and liberties are threatened, the things you hold dear, the things that you value, what are you willing to give up in order to defend those rights and liberties? How far are you willing to go in order to protect what you hold dear? What are you willing to do? And only you can answer those questions, folks. And again, I'm not trying to recruit anybody. I'm not trying to steer anybody in one way or the other. But again, the poem tonight is service to nation. And I just want to throw that out there. I'm not trying to harp on anybody. I'm not upset or mad at anybody. But it's just something that people need to think about. Okay? People need to think about it. Remember that if you've got a child struggling in school or getting into a lot of trouble, just remember, threatening you need to go join the Army, hey, they don't want the discipline problems either. All right? And as far as studying goes, the Army and the military wants the best and the brightest too. And they're going to get their slice of the pie, one way or the other. So if any of you, or my viewers out there, consider joining the military and you're still in school, you need to strive to do the best that you can and be the best that you can before you sign any documents, before you do anything. Get good grades. Learn and retain. Stay out of trouble. Attempt to stay physically fit. And I say attempt because everybody's got a different level of fitness, and I'm not going to speculate where everybody's at, but try to do something to somewhat stay in shape. Anyway, folks, just some food for thought on top of the poem tonight. I hope everybody has a great and wonderful week. Tomorrow I'm going to do probably a gear review. Just don't know what yet. But we shall see what that will entail. But again, charities I'd ask you to support. Tunnelstowers.org, Pin Up for Vets and Valor for Veterans. They can't do it without your help, folks. And what they do for our veterans and their families is just great, wonderful, and phenomenal. Help them out if you can. Vendors, I'd ask you to help out Money Quick Pawn on Rayford Road in Fayetteville, North Carolina. If you live in my area, it's a great place to go for all your firearms and ammunition needs. Robert's Custom Woodworks, help them out. And then the Unsung Patriot. And with that being said, God bless, take care. It's the Old Soldier out.